Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We are considering that fabulous topic. We are trying to understand the fabulous topic of samskaras and vasanas, which gets unique place in Indian philosophy, which postulates that we are all ageless. Our self is ageless. It has been having a fabulous, prolific journey for time, from time without beginning and perhaps for time without end, until one goes to Purushartha, embraces Purushartha, and one gets liberated. So the Atma, the Purusha Tattva, is ageless, genderless, formless, eternal. That means we are eternal. Our self is eternal. That means we are eternal. So, the whole spectrum of experience is really on astronomical scale. Because in terms of age, we say I am 20 years old, 40 years old, 80 years old, 100 years old. No one says I am 1,000 years old and 5,000 years old and 10,000 years old, 1,000,000 years old and billion years old and trillion years old. But the metaphysics has something else to tell us. And we therefore have been collecting experiences, having experiences. We have been developing thought process on our experiences. We have been developing desires for different things, like the desires that we have in our times for particular objects. Say for instance something like a computer or a smartphone or a limousine, a car. Now there was no chance to have such desires 500 years back and 1,000 years back and 10,000 years back. So the desires are getting built up. And this is from timeless history. And therefore this Vaasana Kosha is something very, very, very fabulous. So in the light of this philosophical postulation that we are timeless and ageless and we are Atma and Atma is our self, and therefore this self is even older than this planet and the sun and the moon. Otherwise, usually modern man will tend to think that there was no human being prior to coming up of the Earth planet, which is said to be 4,500 million years of age. The Earth is that much old, that much older, and we cannot imagine that we existed prior to coming up of the Earth. The Sun, he is 4,500 million years old today, and it has another 6,000 or 5,500 years to go before it will go into non-existent state. It will cease to exist. So, Earth is not eternal, Sun is not eternal. They all have come and they all will go. However, if our lifespan is 100 years at the most, the Sun spans 10,000 million years. So something will span in that astronomical, staggering lifespan. But yet, destruction is inevitable. So, how can you expect a human history extending beyond 4,500 years, 4,500 million years, when the earth itself was non-existent. But the thing is that that's not the truth. We have been immortal, we have been birthless, we have been timeless. So if not the earth, we were somewhere else in this boundless cosmos. And the creation is also not a linear concept. Creations come and creations go. Creation is cyclic. So the Sankhya has a wonderful position, quite logical position, quite convincing position, that we have the cycle of creation and dissolution, like day and night cycle goes on and on and on. The creation dissolution cycle goes on and on and on and on. So even if there was no earth, this planet, and no sun, yet we were existing under some other creative cycle, creation cycle. So that is what the metaphysics tells us, that creation is cyclic. The things come and go. So we have been existing indeed from timeless time, immeasurable time, infinitude of time, retrospectively, then understand how much we must have collected impressions, passions, tendencies, desires, experiences. So this Vaasana Maya Kosha, Vaasana Kosha is really a marvel. And that's why I said in the beginning today that it's a very fascinating subject matter that we have taken up, which speaks about Vasanas and Samskars. Now today we are embarking upon a class of Samskars which is called Manipuraka Samskar, Manipuraka Chakra Vritti, Manipuraka Chakra Vritti Vasana Samskar. There is something typical to that Manipuraka Chakra, which is one of the 6 plexi in the human embodiment in the esoteric anatomy. Now, these Manipuraka Vasanas are the newest of Vasanas. This is the unique or outstanding characteristic of Manipuraka Vasanas. Otherwise, usually we think the Vasanas are age-old. The Vasanas have come from past lives, countless of past lives. And then Adhyatma tells us that we have gone through 8.4 million life classes. We have not been all the time human beings, taking birth and dying and taking birth and dying, taking birth and dying. We have been transmigrating into various life forms which are said to be 8.4 million classes. So we have journeyed, or through our journeys, we have gone through all these life classes, and we have developed the tendencies of all those life classes, be that from microscopic lives to bugs and mosquitoes and flies and ants, various kind of tiny creatures to animals and beasts. On the subhuman plane, they are called to be subhuman plane. And then of course, we also had been celestial beings. So due to karma, we have gone to all these planes. 8.4 million include even the celestial beings and not just terrestrial beings, and also infernal beings, or the beings of all the 3 planes, Trilokyam. So understand how much we have developed tendencies, what variegated kinds of tendencies, complex tendencies are within us. The other day I made a reference to the pronoun I, which we refer to in our business activity of life. But we have very parochial view of this pronoun I. The pronoun I actually is referred to the self, and this self is ageless. So when you say I and me, if we are able to put it under something more greater than electron microscope, which can be used in metaphysical realm, because my electron microscope cannot be used in metaphysical realm. It is electron microscope. So we know what a magnitude electron microscope has. So if we can go to even subtler and subtler metaphysical aspects to get under some such scope, then our pronoun I should go under it, and then you will see that your pronoun I consists of subjectivity of ant to elephant, subjectivity from flies and mosquitoes to elephants and blue whales. It contains components of celestial beings to infernal beings to all the terrestrial beings. Our pronoun I has traveled through all those 8.4 million life classes, and therefore the components of all those are indeed in our pronoun I. So howsoever the human being is intelligent, perhaps declared as intelligent most being, human being of all times, still there is an enormous amount of ignorance about oneself. That person will be having blatant ignorance about subjective entity, subjectivistic entity, the pronoun I, the me, and then his knowledge is all about what is around. Anyway, so this pronoun I is indeed ageless, is not only human in human beings, it is not only antish in ants, it is not only mosquito-ish in mosquitoes, buggish in bugs, but even their subjective entity contains human beings. Whereas we make a classification which is perhaps functional for our purpose, that we say that is an ant, I am a man, and that is fish, I am human being, that's a snake, I am human being, that's an elephant, this is the horse, that is the horse, I am human being. But the fact is that subjectivistic entity in all those life forms contains the I of all the beings, potentially. So even pronoun I entity of the ant has human being in it, as much as human being has ant in him or her. So that's the marvelous thing, metaphysical thing and mysterious thing about the pronoun I, the most mysterious thing in this universe, not just in the world, but in the universe, is pronoun I. The me, the myself, the I. Most intriguing, most complex, most mysterious. And that's what the Upanishadic sages go after, that principle, which no one otherwise goes after. In modern academics and knowledge pursuit, nobody goes about inquiring about oneself, but thoroughly inquiring about all that is around, visible or invisible. Anyway, so the pronoun I, in all the beings, not only human beings, but in all the beings, it contains components of all the pronoun I entities of all the beings. Because ant was sometimes a human being. Mosquito was sometimes a human being. Human being was sometimes a mosquito, and human being will sometimes become mosquito. Ant will sometimes become human being. So ant was human being, ant will be human being. Mosquito was human being, mosquito will become human being. This journey is eternal unless one gets liberated. So that's what that is why once again I gave you little taste of that pronoun I entity within oneself, which all of us have, and all of us are ignorant about it. And therefore Adhyatma starts giving some illumination in that realm. Anyway, these Manipuraka samskars, what I am trying to say, are the newest ones. Otherwise, generally all samskars are ageless. But Manipuraka samskars are newest, latest, most recent. This is a unique distinguishing factor between Mooladhara Vasana and Manipuraka Vasana, Swadhisthana Vasana and Manipuraka Vasana, Anahata Vasana and Manipuraka Vasana, Vishuddhi Vasana and Manipuraka Vasana, and Agnya Vasana and Manipuraka Vasana. This is the distinguishing factor, that these are possibly the most newest of samskars. These vasanas are earned in this life here and now. Because of this time, particular present time, the generation hereafter will be developing these vasanas. For instance, today you might see a child taking birth with vasana for cyber world, or the generation hereafter, the children will be born with vasanas for laptops and tablets and computers. But a child 10,000 years back did not have these vasanas, because computer vasana would be the latest vasana. Now we have created a condition that we can have latest vasana for cars, for machines, for airplanes, for computers, for laptops. Because these are the things which are coming as food to our generation. And therefore a child hereafter will have computer vasana, could be a computer prodigy while taking a birth, on birth could be a computer prodigy. So that's why I said these are the newest vasanas. Why is this the case like this? Basically these are called ahara janya vasana. Ahara janya, ahara, food. These are food generated tendencies. What is the food of a child which is born in this, say, 21st century? This is grossly different than we ourselves. If we were born in 20th century, we have people today who are born in 20th century along with born in 21st century. So the babies of our times, 20th centuries or 19th century and now 21st century, we can cite the difference. So these are ahara janya vasanas. Now ahara is food. And the food is not just that food which goes through our digestive system, our mouth, and then food pipe, and then the physiology underneath it, but all kinds of food. What is the intellectual food for the child which is born in recent times, 21st century? What was the intellectual food for child which was born in 20th century, 19th century, 18th century, 17th century, 16th century, 10th century, 5th century, 2nd century, 2nd century BC, 5th century BC, 10th century BC? So we can imagine the differences. What food your ancestors were eating, you are not eating today. What food you are eating today, your ancestors never ate that food. If today's generation people are eating pastas and pizzas, their ancestors did not eat pastas and pizzas. You don't have to go to remote ancestry, very recent ancestry. But today we have children who are born with desire and lust and passion for these modern items of food. But the food items in previous time frames were totally different. But not only the food that we eat, but even the food for intelligence is changing, has changed and will be changing. Now, I'm not just speaking about edible food. Ahara is not just edible food that goes into the mouth and goes into the food pipe and then goes down into stomach and the abdominal organs and later passes out by colons, etc., excretory organs. But referring to every kind of food, as I just now said, even in the intellectual food is changing from generation to generation, and there is incomparable difference between the intellectual food of someone of 1000 years ago and someone now, someone 1000 years later. So all kinds of food. The food goes in all kinds of form. All the food for senses, all the food for mind, intelligence, I-ness, identity. So there are so many kinds of food that we are intaking. The reference is not only to food, which is edible food, but every other kind of food, that is ahara. So apart from edible food items, which are countless, with so many cuisines available today, countless food items are available. But similarly, the sensory food for senses, Shabda Vishaya, Sparsha Vishaya, Rupa Vishaya, Rasa Vishaya, Gandha Vishaya, has been changing. So those are sensory foods. Food for senses, food for intelligence, food for mind, food for emotions, food for psyche, food for consciousness. So these are all foods which are referred to when we speak about Manipuraka Chakra, the food generated Vasanas. So the food generated means all kinds of foods on which human being subsists. The human being is not just subsisting with the food that dietetics mentions, vitamins and proteins and minerals and salts and whatnot. There are nutrients to mind, there are nutrients to buddhi, there are nutrients to asmita, there are nutrients to bhavana, there are nutrients to antakaranam, apart from nutrients to flesh. Unfortunately, modern dietetics is obsessed with the idea that the food that one eats, edible food even, which is said to be falling in some category of vitamins and proteins and minerals and salts and etc., they think it is only for body matter. This is a very obsessional idea which is very, very misleading. But the dietetics will think that your food goes for body matter, and therefore they just think why a food is good for your body matter and not good for your mind matter. No dietitian of our time, up to our times, in the modern era of course, except the Oriental wisdom, no one has ever related dietetics to mind. But the dietetics or the diet is also for the mind. This is the postulation, famous postulation that you get in Chandogya Upanishad, which is oft quoted in the series that we are having, Annamayahi Saumya Manaha, Ahara Shuddhau Sattva Shuddhi. So even the edible food definitely turns out the mind in that theorem which says Annamayahi Saumya Manaha. The food is not only for body matter, to develop the body matter, to improve the body matter, to nutrify the body matter, but even to nutrify the mind matter. This is the wisdom of the Lord. Annamayahi Saumya Manaha. And therefore, what to eat and what not to eat and what should be the food culture in Adhyatma would consider the mind primarily and body secondarily. So, this obsessional idea of the dietitians that we are having in our times has been brought to notice to you now. The point is, there are so many kinds of food, and one is not just nourished by edible food which is taken in a dish on a dining table, but there are so many other things which nourish even your body matter. So suppose somebody has turmoil, emotional turmoil in life, howsoever healthy food is taken, yet the health doesn't pick up in the body. If the nutrition to emotions are not received, then there is a starvation even to body matter, and it does get benefit if those nutrients are coming sumptuously. The emotional component, emotional nutrition is important, intellectual nutrition is important, mental nutrition is important, the nutrition to very I-ness is important, and for that we don't settle at a dining table. We have to settle elsewhere to get nutrients to mind components such as manas, buddhi, ahankar, bhavana. We have to settle down to some other place and not a dining table. And human being needs all these nutritions. Life form needs all these nutritions. So that is what is circumscribed by the concept ahara in this Manipuraka Vasana class. Now these Manipuraka Vasanas are generated by what you eat through your mouth, what you eat through your eyes, what you eat through your ears. Shabda Vishaya, Sparsha Vishaya, Rupa Vishaya, Rasa Vishaya, Gandha Vishaya, and then Manasa Vishaya, Bauddhika Vishaya, Asmita Vishaya, Bhavana Vishaya, Antakarana Vishaya. So all these, they are going for nutrition, and we ideally want to have all nutritions. Square meal concept should not just consider body matter and what is square meals. It should consider all components of human embodiment. Now these are all foods, and all these foods generate tendencies. So what you have eaten now will create a tendency. What you are eating through your mouth will create tendency because of annamayi saumyamana. What you eat through your eyes and ears and senses and mind, psyche, consciousness will generate tendencies. And that's why these are called ahara generated tendencies. Ahara janya vasana, ahara janya samskar. So that is why I said these are the newest, latest body of samskaras, because they depend upon what you eat. Like I just now said, that the new generation will have different tendencies. They develop tendencies for 2 minutes noodles. Was it there in your times? If this question is put to the parents, no, it is now in the children, present generation children. There are so many vasanas. To amuse you, I can tell you that today's generation will have BMW Vasana, iPhone Vasana, iPad Vasana, mobile Vasana, BlackBerry Vasana, laptop Vasana. All these Vasanas are typical to this generation. Now they were not there to your ancestors, not at all to remote ancestors. So that's why it's a very interesting class of vasanas and samskars when we consider Manipuraka, Vritti, Vasana and Samskar. And interestingly, let me tell you that in your previous life, because of your good deeds called Sukruta, you are having Sukha Phalabhoga Vasana, or you have Sukha Phalabhoga. It is because of virtues that committed in your previous life and previous lives. Now, if you are going to get that happiness, because your punya should give you sukham. This theorem was considered in the second chapter. That papa punya karmas give you the phalas, corresponding phalas. Sukha phala, sukha dukkha hetu is in papa punya. So this was a precept that Patanjali gave us. So suppose your previous lives, you have collected, stacked up good amount of merits, punya. Naturally it has to give you sukha. But how will it give sukha? It will give by sukha vastu of our times. Now, what is sukha vastu today? That is only going to give you sukha. Because in our times, there are many people who are sad because they don't have smartphone, they don't have BMW, they don't have iPhone, they don't have iPad, they don't have a laptop. And that's the sorrow. Now how do you get pleasure today? When you have iPad, when you have iPhone, when you have BMW, you are happy. So if the punya is going to give you happiness, that happiness object will have reference to the sukha vastu of our times. But for previous generations, the sukha vastu were different things. Objects giving pleasures did not include iPhones and iPads and computers and cars and whatnot. So their pleasurable objects were different. So try to understand what were the pleasurable objects for your grandparents. And of course, if they got pleasures, they got through those objects. Now, what are pleasurable objects for you? Pleasurable objects for you. You have to get those objects today for your pleasure, otherwise you won't be happy. You won't be happy by what your great grandfather got and became happy. You won't be happy by getting it today. You will have to have something else. So sukha dukha anubhava, experience of pain and pleasure, is kala sapeksha. There are certain things which are sorrows today. Maybe they were not sorrows in previous generations or previous times, or it could be vice versa. What is sorrow today was perhaps could be a delight in some remote generations, retrospectively 10 heads and 20 heads and 100 heads backwards. So sukha dukha concepts, delight sorrow concepts, are kala sapeksha. They are time related. The sukha vastu is also time related. What is sukha vastu today was not sukha vastu in yesteryears. What is dukkha vastu today perhaps what was not dukkha vastu in yesteryears and yester centuries. So the karma siddhanta considers this. Now today one will not be happy to be possessing a bullock cart or horse cart, but whereas a generation about 4, 5, 6 generations ago, that was a happiness. Having a bullock cart, having a horse cart, they were happy. You won't be happy today. Now you want a 4-wheeler, or you want to have your own helicopter, your own airplane. Then only you will be happy. So for sukha bhoga and dukkha bhoga, Manipuraka Vasanas are considered. This is a marvelous piece of information that comes in Karma Siddhanta. Anyway, so the point is that Manipuraka Vasanas, Samskars, Vrittis have a cord connected with present times. And listen to one more fascinating thing. In esoteric anatomy and physiology, the belly is not only the place where your food is digested and processed. Even the thoughts are processed in your Manipuraka region. And therefore the vichara vipaka, like anna vipaka, vichara vipaka takes place in belly. And therefore in vernacular language you have expressions such as I am saying something from my belly. This is the vernacular expression. If you are genuine about particular instruction or particular advice that you are giving to someone, you say, I am giving this advice from my belly, not from brain, but from belly. So also the love and affection is many times referred to heart and belly. The Maya of the belly, that is the mother's Maya. Her Maya is turned out from belly, or affection and love is turned out from the heart. Although it is psychosis, it is not developed in the brain, and that's why you say you love from heart. All your feelings are processed in the brain, but you say I love from the heart. Daya, Kshama, Maya, Prem, Dvesh, Tiraskar, all these variegated emotions, they are turned out from belly. And that's why that elephant-headed deity in the Hindu pantheon, Lord Ganesha, Ganapati, Ganapati, he is called Lambodara. His name is Lambodara. Lamba means long, Udara means belly. Why is it that? Because he can assimilate all our sins. And that is why we try to worship Ganesha and beseech that our aparadha, our papa, our sins should be taken into his belly, because they can only be taken into his belly and can be dissolved there. So that's why he is called Lambodara, because he is the one who is Sukhakarta Vignaharta, and he does that by taking our sins into his belly. This is also vernacular expression that somebody has to take somebody's sins into belly. Mother takes the sins of the child, sins of her offspring into her belly easily. So also there is expression that you must swallow your anger. If you swallow something, it goes into belly. So when the anger is bubbling up, it is coming up like a reflux, and it is about to come out through your mouth and through your eyes. It should be swallowed. And when you swallow, it goes to belly, and the Pachanagni digests it. So, just as there is gastric fire, Pachanagni, gastric fire, there is also mention of Jnanagni, Kamagni, Krodhagni, Yogagni, so that they can carry out different kinds of activities. And the Jnanagni, Yogagni, they burn our sins, they digest our sins. That's why the mention of Jnanagni and Yogagni comes in Adhyatma. The point is, these Manipuraka Vasanas are to be set right. They are to be managed. And yoga has great number of kriyas with reference to belly. Because Manipuraka Vasanas are to be processed, handled, arranged, set right, treated. So there are Udyana Kriya, Mudra, Bandha, Kapalbhati, Agnisar Kriyas, Navali Kriyas, and all asanas, pranayamas predominantly work on belly, so that Manipuraka management also takes place. So that's the interesting thing about Manipuraka Vasana and Manipuraka Samskars and Manipuraka tendencies. Basically, Annamaya Saumya Manaha, Ahara Shuddho Sattva Shuddhi, these are very vital precepts which have reference to Manipuraka Vasanas. So that's the little informative input for one to really have greater inquisitiveness to go into chakra concept of yoga, Shat Chakra concept of yoga, and of course Manipuraka Chakra in yoga. So with that, we will end the session. Before we proceed to Anahata Chakra Vritti Vasana, we consider the Manipuraka. So with that, the session ends. Namaskar all of you.